Our family trip had barely started when my mother decided she would control my money. With a triumphant grin, she snatched my purse and declared, "We'll use your credit card for this vacation." I kept my face calm, but inside I was already ready. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward her. You should have seen her reaction to that message from the bank. Her confident smile evaporated, her face drained of color, her eyes scanning the screen. And then she screamed. That was when I realized this trip was about to fall apart. My mother froze in the middle of the terminal, still clutching my purse like she'd hit the jackpot. The smug look she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand was gone. She assumed I'd just give in, but I had planned otherwise. A little backstory. Growing up, saying no was never allowed. Any attempt to set a boundary came with guilt trips, manipulation, repeated calls, and being cast as the selfish daughter who didn't care. I knew exactly how the scene would play out if I flat out refused to pay. So instead, I set my own terms. I booked my flight and paid for my hotel myself. No shared room, no access to my card. I was coming, but I made sure they couldn't exploit me. My mother hated it. She sulked, complained, threw tantrums. But finally, she seemed to drop it. Or so I thought. Fast forward to the airport after landing. I was mentally exhausted, bracing for whatever drama my mother might stage. Sure enough, at baggage claim, she struck. She grabbed my purse. "We'll be using your card for this trip," she announced, grinning with certainty. I didn't react outwardly. I smiled, pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and showed her the alert. She read it, then reread it, then screamed. I'd prepared for this. A week before leaving, I called my bank, explained the history, the control, the manipulation, the repeated attempts to access my money. The bank rep understood and helped me set strong protections. My card was geo-locked. Transactions outside my immediate area would be flagged and declined unless I approved them manually in the app. I also set my daily spending limit to $1. My mother's grip tightened so hard her knuckles went white. "What did you do?" she hissed. I shrugged and said, "Bank security." They thought large charges from a place I wasn't yet at looked suspicious. Her face contorted with fury. "Fix it now," she demanded. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was already plotting her next move. I checked into the hotel, feeling victorious. My room was on a different floor from my parents'. Deliberate. I needed distance. But the next morning, the nightmare began. There was pounding at my door. Not a polite knock, but a bang, like someone trying to force it down. Groaning, I checked the peephole. My mother was there, furious. Before I could decide how to respond, she yelled through the door, "Open this door now! We need to talk!" I considered pretending not to be there, but ignoring her would only escalate things, so I cracked the door an inch and kept the chain on. She shoved a crumpled paper through the gap. "The front desk says our card was declined. We can't check into our room. Fix it." I stared at her. "You didn't prepay?" she scoffed. "Why would we? We were planning to use your card." I wanted to laugh until I cried, but I handed the paper back and said, "Sounds like a you problem." She slammed her fist against the doorframe. "You think this is funny? Where are we supposed to sleep?" I shrugged. "Maybe you should have brought your own money." She exploded, accusing me of abandoning the family, humiliating her, ruining the trip. And then I remembered. He was just as culpable. He never stopped her. He never defended me. He'd never told her she was wrong. I shook my head. Not my problem. I shut the door. She didn't stop. An hour later, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Calls, texts, voicemails, which I ignored. Then there was a polite knock. I looked through the peephole. Hotel security. I sighed. I opened the door. The security officer gave a tight smile and said, "Your parents say you stole their money and left them stranded." I laughed outright. The guard didn't. He said they insisted they be allowed to stay in my room. "Absolutely not," I said. "Do they have proof I took anything?" He hesitated. "No," I cut him off. "They're lying. I booked my own room and paid for it. They tried to take advantage of me and are now facing the consequences." The guard shifted. The hotel manager, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and an exhausted face, stepped forward. "I checked the system," she said. "You paid in full. Your parents did not. If they can't provide another payment method, they'll have to leave." My mother screamed, and just like that, they were gone. But she wasn't finished. Later that night at the resort bar, trying to relax, my phone pinged. Attempted login from an unrecognized device. Then, password reset requested. My stomach dropped. I sprinted back to my room, locked the door, and opened my banking app. Sure enough, someone had tried to reset my password. I acted quickly. New password. Two-factor turned up. Extra security alerts. I called the bank and placed a fraud alert on my account. Then I texted my mother, "Nice try. Hope you enjoy the rest of your trip." No reply. The next morning, my father called. "She says you locked her out of the bank," he said. I smiled. "No, I locked her out of my account. She was trying to break in at the time." Silence, then a sigh. "You know how she is," he said. "Yeah," I replied, "and I'm done." That's when I made my final move. My whole life I'd been on the defensive, letting my mother lie, manipulate, steal, and justify it by saying she was my mother and family takes care of each other. But this attempted bank break-in changed things. I stayed quiet for a moment, gripping the phone as I processed what my brother had just told me. She had pulled the same scheme on him. She wasn't satisfied with taking from me. She'd gone after him, too. A mix of anger and disgust washed through me. I was furious about her attempt on my account, but this was different. My brother was the golden child, the one who never heard no. If she'd crossed even him, she had no limits. "How much did she take?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant. He exhaled. "I don't know yet. I'm still checking. It wasn't small. She took little amounts over months, and it adds up." I pressed. "How much?" He hesitated. "Over 1,000, maybe more." My stomach turned. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This was theft. I thought through the options. We could go to the police. We could report fraud and theft, and finally make her answer for what she'd done. Part of me wanted that. "We can't let this go," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We have proof, statements, suspicious transactions. We can take her down for good." There was a long pause on the other end. Then he said quietly, "Maybe there's a better way. Something that doesn't involve the police, but ends up being much worse for her." That stopped me. "Worse how?" I asked. He told me to meet him. He sent the hotel location. Without hesitation, I grabbed my things and left. On the drive, my mind spun. Anger, urgency, the image of my mother trying to break into my bank, still fresh. The worst part, she likely felt no remorse. To her, we were resources to be used. When I got to my brother's hotel, he was waiting, tense and betrayed looking. He wasted no time. "She thinks she can do this and get away with it," he whispered. "She spent the trip money. She tried to steal from you, and I just found out she took out a loan in my name. I sat there, stunned. A loan in your name? How? He said he saw it in his online banking. A loan taken out without his knowledge. No notification. Nothing. My skin prickled with outrage. That's fraud. He gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, and what happens to scammers? The question hung between us. We could report her, or we could do something else. I raised an eyebrow. Something else? He leaned in, voice low and serious. She wants to steal from us. What if we take something back? I was suspicious. You mean steal from her? He corrected me. Not steal, he said, but take something that would really hurt her, something that would teach her a lesson in a way the police maybe wouldn't. I sat there, waiting as he outlined his plan, and I realized we were past manipulation. We were at a point where family lines had been crossed. And now it was time to decide how far we'd go to stop it. Everyone was silent, but this time we decided to play her game. He took a deep breath, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. What if we convince her to put the house in my name? He said. I blinked, confused. What? Think about it, he continued. She's going to need money, a lot of it. Once she realizes she can't steal from us anymore, she'll panic. If we plant the right idea, she might do it herself. My mind started racing. I understood what he meant. Our mother always spiraled when she felt cornered, impulsive, desperate, and quick to make bad decisions. If we made her believe her only way out was to transfer a property into his name, she might fall for it. I exhaled. So, how do we make that happen? He gave a cold smile. We need to create a problem bigger than hers, one that makes her think the only solution is us. A chill ran through me. My brother had never been manipulated the way I had. He was always protected, always favored. ... But now that he'd been betrayed, he wasn't going to let it slide. You think you can make her believe it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. She loves me, right? I'm the favorite. She trusts me before anyone else. It was risky, but there was something poetic about it. Our mother had always used us like her personal bank, and now we were about to reverse it. I took a steady breath. Then let's do it right. He smirked. I already have a few ideas. I leaned closer. Tell me, and just like that, the real revenge began. I sat back in the hotel chair, studying my brother. He looked calm, but I could see the anger in his eyes, maybe even stronger than mine. How do we do this? I asked. He gave that familiar grin, the one that meant he was planning something unexpected. She's desperate, he said. She thinks she's out of options. No money, no way to recover. So we give her one. What kind of solution? I asked cautiously. He leaned in, lowering his voice. What if she borrowed from a loan shark? I blinked. What? Think about it, he said. If she believes her only way out is quick cash, she'll start looking for options. She can't use our cards. The bank's watching her. But if we suggest someone, a high-interest lender, she might take it. I paused, thinking it through. It made sense. My mother always went for quick fixes without thinking about consequences. So we give her a little push, I said. Tell her we know someone. Make it sound like it's her only way. Exactly, he replied, grinning. Then we take the money and vanish. I raised an eyebrow. And how does that not come back to haunt us? He shrugged. She can't report it. She can't tell the police about a crime she committed. And if it's a loan shark, that becomes her problem. It was risky but satisfying. After years of being used, we were finally turning the tables. "All right," I said, "how do we make this happen?" He already had a plan. Through one of his contacts, he found someone who lent money at outrageous interest rates. No questions asked. The kind of person my mother would avoid if she were thinking straight. But she wasn't. She was desperate. The next day, I went to my parents' place. My mother opened the door, her face tight with resentment. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. I crossed my arms. "We need to talk. I know things are bad, but I found a way to help you." Her eyes lit up for a moment before she masked it. "Oh, finally realize you need to support your family?" I forced a polite smile. "I just want to stop this from getting worse. If you can get some money now, you can turn things around. But banks won't help. I know someone who can." She studied me carefully. "What kind of someone?" "Someone who lends fast. No paperwork, but with high interest. So be sure you can repay." She hesitated, biting her lip. I could see her thinking it through, weighing the risks, but drawn to the promise of quick money. "How much?" she finally asked. I glanced at my brother, who played reluctant. "Depends on what you need. Maybe 20 grand?" She inhaled sharply. 20,000? It was a lot, but to her, it sounded like salvation. "And you think he'd lend me that much?" "If I vouch for you," he said. That was all she needed. 2 days later, she showed up with $20,000 in cash. Real bills reeking of desperation. She handed it to me, smirking. "Here it is, but it's a loan. You'll pay me back with interest." I smiled, gripping the envelope. Of course. Then I walked away, holding back laughter. That night, I sat next to my brother as he opened his laptop. He pulled out the cash, counted it, and immediately converted it all to Bitcoin. "Done," he said. I blinked. "That's it?" He shrugged. "Now we wait, and if she asks about it, we act clueless." I laughed, partly from disbelief, partly from sad. She thought she'd trapped us in her game, but now she was the one cornered. She owed $20,000 to a loan shark and had nothing left. We had just turned her scam into our investment. 2 days later, my mother called. "I want my money." I feigned confusion. "What money?" "The money I lent you." I smiled. "Oh, you wanted it back now? I thought it was long-term." "The interest is piling up. I need it now." I rolled my eyes. "Relax. Everything's under control." "Control?" she snapped. "You borrowed from a loan shark. If I don't pay—" "Wow," I interrupted. "That really sounds like your problem." And I hung up. For the first time, she was on the defensive. She finally knew what it felt like to be powerless. At first, I didn't celebrate. It all felt dangerous, like walking on thin ice. She had always found a way out before, but not this time. This time, the trap was hers. We acted normal. My brother and I carried on as if nothing had happened. But she panicked quickly. First messages, then calls, then unexpected visits. At first, she still tried to sound authoritative. "Where's my money?" I'd reply calmly. "What money?" She'd yell, slam doors, call my father to pressure us. Nothing worked. She couldn't report it. She couldn't take it to court. The money had been given willingly, and now the loan shark was demanding payment. The first time she came crying, I knew our plan had worked. "If you have a heart, help me fix this. They'll kill us." I folded my arms. "You're the one who took the money, remember? You manipulated me." Her face hardened. You and your brother set me up." "Maybe you should have been smarter," I said simply. She fell silent, realizing I meant it. For the first time, she saw that I didn't care anymore. When they began selling furniture, they sold the car, then household items. Still not enough. Eventually, they had to sell the house. That's when I knew the game was over. Our mother, always proud, always controlling, was now signing away the home she had bragged about for years. All because her own scheme backfired. Before they moved into a small apartment, she looked at me with pure hatred. "You destroyed our family." I smiled. "No, you did that yourself." She had no reply. After that, they never tried to manipulate us again. No money requests, no emotional games, nothing. My father never spoke of it, but deep down, he knew. This happened because he never stood up to her. And my mother, she never forgave us. Not because we ruined her life, but because she believed I had influenced my brother, her perfect son. The irony was that he planned almost everything. I never felt guilty, not once. In the end, we got what we wanted: freedom. The money grew slowly. My brother was patient, smarter with investments than I ever was. Months later, he called me. "We need to celebrate," he said, grinning as he showed me his phone. The amount had doubled. "No way," I whispered. "We made the right move," he said. "And now it's only fair you get your share." I was speechless. He didn't owe me anything. It was his plan, his execution. "You don't have to," I said. He laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. Without you, I wouldn't have done this. You stood by me even when I was Mom's favorite. You deserve it." He handed me an envelope, far more than I expected. If we wait a bit longer, it might triple. For the first time, he was thanking me, genuinely. That meant more than the money. Now, my life is peaceful. I moved to a new city, bought my own apartment, and rebuilt everything from scratch. No shadows from the past, no dependency. My brother's thriving too, completely independent, living the life our mother always wanted for herself. The difference? He earned it honestly. Sometimes he texts me, laughing. If she knew I'm making money off what she tried to steal, she'd lose her mind. And he's probably right. As for our parents, they're exactly where life placed them. After selling everything to pay the loan shark, they moved into a small apartment. My mother, once so proud, now lives in a place she would have mocked years ago. My father remains silent, still living in her shadow. They never reached out again, and that silence is the greatest gift, because now they know they can never use us again. They have no control, and we're finally free. Growing up with parents like mine taught me many things, but perhaps the most valuable lesson was this: having parents doesn't mean they have the right to control your life. I learned that lesson the hard way. My parents believed that because they raised me, they automatically had access to everything I had: my time, my patience, and especially my money. They never saw their children as individuals. To them, we were simply extensions of themselves, resources created to fulfill their needs without question. For a long time, I accepted that. I believed that family is family, that it's just temporary, that they would do the same for me one day. But that was a lie. They never would have done the same for me. What my parents wanted wasn't a loving family bond. They wanted a long-term investment. They raised their children like savings accounts, expecting us to be available whenever they needed something. And for years, that's exactly what I was. I allowed them to take advantage of me. But eventually, something had to change. Because if you never stop them, they will never stop. They'll take every cent, every favor, every ounce of your sanity, and convince themselves it's normal. They'll call it your duty. Saying no to manipulative parents feels like pulling an emotional rug out from under them. A rug they've spent years weaving under your feet. They'll try to guilt-trip you, call you ungrateful, and remind you of everything they ever did for you, as if raising a child is a lifelong contract you must repay forever. But you don't owe anyone for being born. Real parents raise their children to become independent, not to become obedient puppets. Real parents understand that when their children grow up, they become adults with the right to make their own decisions. I had to learn that through painful experience. I watched my parents drown in debt because they believed they could control their children's money. I listened to my mother blame me for her failures because she couldn't take responsibility for her own choices. I had to cut them off. It was the only way to be free. And now I can say with complete certainty, it was the best decision I ever made. I have no regrets, no guilt, and I don't miss them. If there's one thing I want people to understand, it's this: parents are not gods. They don't automatically have a right to what's yours. They don't have the right to control your life. If you don't protect yourself, they'll drain you of everything you have. And when there's nothing left, do you know what happens? Nothing. They won't help you. They won't repay what they took. They'll just move on to someone else. That's what I learned, and that's why I'm free today. Because I took back control of my life. And if I can give one piece of advice, it's this: do the same before it's too late. Years passed without me thinking about them. My life moved forward, and every day without hearing their voices or feeling the weight of forced obligation, I could breathe easier. I finally learned how to exist without being someone else's endless provider. I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. My life was mine. I made my own decisions, worked for what I earned, and spent my money as I pleased, without worrying about anyone trying to take it. I owed nothing to anyone, and that was the best feeling in the world. But life has a way of bringing old things back. I was visiting a distant cousin, one of those relatives who stayed out of family issues, but kept in touch occasionally. We were talking casually when he suddenly said something that caught me off guard. "You know how your parents are, right? They talk about you to everyone," he said. I frowned. "Talk about me? How?" He shrugged, eating casually, unaware of how heavy his words were. "They tell people you abandoned them, that you left them with nothing, that you humiliated your own family, that you got rich and don't even look back." I laughed, not from shock, but because it was so predictable. "And you believe that?" I asked. He lifted his hands in defense. "Of course not, but a lot of people do." I took a deep breath. Should I care? Maybe, but I didn't. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people prefer lies when the truth is inconvenient. They'd already chosen their version of the story. In their eyes, I was the villain. I could have explained everything, shown proof, messages, bank statements, recordings, all of it. But what for? People like that don't care about the truth. They just want a story that makes them feel superior. They want someone to blame, a villain to point at. Because if they admitted I was right, they'd have to admit my parents were wrong, and no one wants to face that. So I shrugged and took a sip of my drink. My cousin chuckled. "You really don't care, do you?" "Why would I?" I replied. "Because at the end of the day, I was right. I'm not financially responsible for anyone. I'm not an open wallet. And if there's one decision I'm proud of, It's refusing to let myself be treated like a never-ending source of money. They could call me names, twist stories, and play the victims. None of that changed the truth. No one has the right to demand someone else's money. They wanted to live at my expense, to keep me paying for their poor choices. But I didn't need them anymore. And that's what really angered them. Not the money, not the house, not my success. It was that they lost control over me. As long as I depended on them, I was their puppet. But once I learned to stand alone, once I refused to keep sacrificing myself, I became their enemy. I was fine with that, because I'm not obligated to support anyone. They could cry, spread lies, throw tantrums, but at the end of the day, I'm the one in control of my life and my money, and no one would ever take that from me again. Time passed, and while my parents sank deeper into the chaos they created, my brother flourished. He had always been intelligent, but after everything, he became strategic. He didn't just learn from our past, he built defenses so no one, especially our parents, could ever exploit him again. The difference between us was clear. I wanted freedom. He wanted control. I wanted to move on. He wanted to make sure no one could ever use him. And his path to that was simple: Bitcoin. At first, I didn't understand his obsession. I worked, saved money traditionally, and lived quietly. But he was different. He studied, tracked charts, learned strategies, and understood the market deeply. He realized that keeping money in traditional banks was a trap. He wanted his finances in a place where no one, not even our parents, could touch them. When he first explained it, I half joked, "What if one day you actually need that money?" He smiled and said, "Then I can take it any time I want, but no one else can. Not the bank, not the government, not our parents." And he was right. I didn't stay in touch with our parents much, but I knew things weren't going well. The house was long gone, and the small apartment they lived in was a far cry from what they once had. My mother, as always, couldn't handle failure. She had to blame someone, and we were always the easiest targets. The stories about me still spread. Now I wasn't just the ungrateful son who abandoned his parents. I was also the manipulator who turned my brother against them. In her mind, he would never have acted on his own. He was the good son until he wasn't. But deep down, she still had hope. She believed he'd come back, that guilt would bring him home. What she didn't know was that my brother had completely vanished from the system. No bank accounts, no assets under his name, nothing they could use to guilt him. His money was untouchable. I found out in the best way possible. One day, he asked to meet. His tone was serious. We met at a quiet bar, and he got straight to the point. "You know they still try to contact me, right?" he said. I sighed. "Let me guess. They need help again?" He nodded. "Same story. They're struggling, and apparently, I'm their last hope." I rolled my eyes. "They still think you have a regular bank account, don't they?" He smirked. "Exactly. And that's where it gets interesting." He showed me a screenshot of an email from our father. "Son, I know we've had our differences, but your mother is desperate. We can't keep up with the bills. I know you have the means to help us. Please, do something." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you reply?" He grinned. "Yeah, for a second, I almost felt bad. Almost." "What did you say?" He turned the phone toward me. "Dad, I understand, but I haven't used banks in years. All my money is in cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to transfer anything. I hope things work out. Best of luck." I laughed. "You basically told them even if you wanted to help, you couldn't." He nodded, smiling. "Exactly. And the best part? They believed it." That was the end of it. For the first time, they were completely powerless. They could shout, cry, and tell anyone how heartless we were. But none of that changed reality. There wasn't a cent they could touch. Soon after, more messages came. First, our mother tried emotional guilt. When that failed, she switched to threats. "You'll regret this. You were never a real son." I read them and couldn't help but laugh. She never realized we had accepted this reality years ago. They were on their own now. Our father stayed quiet. He'd never been one to make decisions. He just followed along. And now, even he knew there was no hope left. The last we heard, they were selling what little they had left. Maybe they'd find a way to survive. Maybe they wouldn't. But here's the irony. The one thing my mother hated most in life was losing control. And now, she had none. No power, no money, no influence over us. My brother moved on, untouchable and free. And I finally got the confirmation I always needed. We had won. And they would never, ever be able to control us again.